You're listening to another episode of the Coaster101 podcast, and we're here to talk about the breaking news. Depending on when this releases, it's probably still breaking at this point. Six Flags America is closing, but we've got a lot to say about it. But joining me this week on the podcast, we've got Evan Scharf up in the Northeast. Evan, what's up?
Hey, how's it going? Wish this was better circumstances, but here we are.
It's always good circumstances when we get to talk about coasters, even though it's kind of sad that we're closing. And waking up bright and early on the West Coast to record this with us. It's like 8 a.m. his time, which is super nice. Eric Woolley. Eric, what's up?
Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning. We still don't have a video podcast, but everybody should know that Eric is drinking his coffee out of a Coaster101 coffee mug. So he's dedicated to the cause.
Else should do by going to coaster101.com/shop, something like that. Does that work?
/merch. You'll find it. Go to our website. It's there.
Go to the website and click on the shop button. You can get your own Coaster101 mug.
Yes.
It's great. It's a good mug. It's very big.
There we go. Shameless plugs out of the way. We're gonna talk the biggest, latest breaking news in the theme park industry, and I'm gonna just read a little bit because that's what people want to hear of the press release that Six Flags Entertainment Corporation put out yesterday, May 1st. This is Six Flags announces plan to close Six Flags America and Hurricane Harbor after the 2025 season. And it notes the park property is to be marketed for redevelopment as part of portfolio optimization program. This means it's being sold for real estate. The press release basically says it's closing after the 2025 operating season. It will operate until November 2nd, so they'll get through their Halloween season. They've got 70 full-time associates. Severance and other benefits will be provided. Blah, blah, blah. Legal. Press release. My first question to you guys. Six Flags America, I feel like, has a reputation among coaster enthusiasts as kind of one of the, what I'm going to call, redheaded stepchildren of, legacy Six Flags, and now, especially now that Six Flags and Cedar Fair have all been brought in together, it could be even more of a redheaded stepchild. I know we've all been to this park, and Eric, I'll start with you because Evan, I know your visit was a little bit more recent, but Eric, what do you remember most about Six Flags America? And do you think it had the reputation, deserved the reputation it had?
Yeah, so I went in 2018 when I was road tripping between other parks on the East Coast. So I think I was going probably from Busch Gardens and Kings Dominion on my way up to Dorney and Hershey and stopping in Six Flags America on the way, which is probably the way anyone who isn't from the area visits. I think that is certainly fair at the time. I mean, still, I think the newest coaster there was put in 2012?
2014.
Oh, 2014,
Raging Cajun.
Came from somewhere else, right? Got relocated from somewhere.
Yeah, came from Great America up in Chicago.
Wild mice don't count because I usually skip them because I don't want to wait in line for them.
But it's a spinning wild mouse.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think that is fair. Even at the time, I mean, I was trying to go back and be like, oh, how many coasters here were really good? And it's like, maybe a couple. But I will say that I was very surprised. Clearly, once upon a time, it was more cared for, and that it had, and I was surprised that there's clearly had been maintenance done on this, that it had the entry area of the park is actually very well themed to a colonial America sort of entryway and architecture, all on that, and then the Wild West section, and I think last year, 2 years ago, got turned into sort of a steampunk section. I mentioned this before we started recording, that there was a live stunt show, Wild West stunt show happening there, which, other than Knott's Berry Farm, I don't know of any Six Flags or Cedar Fair parks have any live shows in them. And that was still going as of last year. Different versions of it as they change the theming every year, but that was what was most shocking to me. Of like, oh, there is something special and unique here. But certainly from a roller coaster portfolio or what their latest rides were, yeah, one of the forgotten Six Flags, I think, is a fair description.
Yeah, and Evan, you've been a little bit more recently. I think you were there. You said 2023. We were talking before we recorded. What do you remember?
Yeah, I mean, this was the last of my East Coast parks to get to, and for good reason. I just think that it being in the area that it is definitely overlooked by the Hershey's and the Busch Gardens and the King's Dominions of the DC area. First impression is if you are a DC resident, it is not easy to get to unless you have a car. I remember I was visiting a friend of mine there, and I had to take one of the trains outside of the city, and then there was no public transportation stop for the park, so I had to take an Uber from a mall parking lot. So not definitely not the most convenient, but I think the writing was on the wall for this, and I look at other parks that are near it that are part of the chain at Great Escape at Darien Lake, wondering if it might have the same fate as this one.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting, and I visited this park kind of like Eric. I was driving up to New Jersey for work for North Carolina, so it was like, okay, well, how can I build some parks into this? So I drove up, stayed with a friend in DC, went to Six Flags America, then did Dorney and Great Adventure also on the way back, and yeah, I remember this being a very Six Flags park, which is it's not a bad thing because right now the merger has benefited a lot of the legacy Six Flags parks. You see like things like the dining improvements at Six Flags over Georgia and other places. But this is as OG Six Flags as the, mid 2010s get. And I was there in 2016. I rode every coaster there except Superman because I didn't fit. So that means my best coasters were Wild One, which I think I called my favorite at the time in the park, which was 100 years old and had been moved and all that. And then Roar was pretty good. I got a solo ride on Joker's Jinx because the train got stuck in the brakes and they cleared the station. I was like, this isn't going to take that long, and it didn't. So I got a solo ride there. And then they've got the SLC. I didn't ride the kiddie coaster because this was back before I was like counting credits, and I realized I have to ride the kiddie coaster. Sorry, Eric, I know that offends you.
Whatever you want to spend your time on, Andrew.
That's a good point.
You.
But it was a very quick, couple hours. It was like me and a bunch of school groups, so I made it through the park pretty quick.
Yeah.
I feel like though, especially in recent past, we've been talking about the merger and how Six Flags has been removing rides all these places. Like everybody was up in arms about King Dakar and Lava Bora and Night Hockey Caravans and yada yada yada. Did you guys realize that like between 2022 and 2023, Six Flags America has had 11 rides removed? Like, it was the writing on the wall. I think
I only realized it last night when trying to see what was still at the park. But it was mostly.
It's funny because I thought the opposite. Like when you saw the investments that they were putting into I forget the name of the area with the steampunk and the SLC, and then also the clear Superman trains. Mm-hmm. I was like, maybe it is here to stay. And then for days later, after the train news came out, for it to be closing, it was a little bit of a shocker.
Yeah, for sure. And like this was like 2 weeks ago they announced this new train, because I remember texting a buddy of mine who works at the park, and I was like, hey, are these trains any more fat people friendly? Because I know they're new trains, whatever. And he goes, I don't know. And that was that conversation. But roller coaster trains are not cheap, and fortunately, I think Six Flags can find a way to utilize, move these trains to other attractions or other parks in the chain. I feel like some of these attractions, and I know we've got an article on the website that Larry wrote that I haven't read yet, so I haven't like tried to like spoil myself of what could leave Six Flags America. They could go in like they did at Kentucky Kingdom and just start unbolting things from the ground and picking them up, moving them to other parks. They did the same thing with Six Flags New Orleans. A couple of things got moved from there after Hurricane Katrina, after they dried out a little bit. It's terrible to say. Sorry. Um, but I just like looking at the ride lineup here, and I've taken notes, and I don't even know where my notes are on the page. There we go. Um, do you guys think there's anything off the top of your head, like full blown rides that could be relocated to another park in the chain? And if so, where do you think it would go?
I can take a first stab. I mean, I don't know where they would go, but one thing about people won't like this, but and I don't know if Six Flags would do it because it's not worth it. But they have some of these not great rides that they have are ones that just like have a fixed footprint, go on a pad, a spinning mouse like Raging Cajun. SLCs kind of are the same and take up the same spot. SLCs get moved around. It certainly happened a lot. I don't know if it would go somewhere else in a Six Flags chain, or do they sell it so it goes to some park in like South America or something instead. Even Batwing is one that has also been moved around. I think. Do they want to keep any of those? Like, I don't know if Six Flags is interested in keeping 20-year-old hard to maintain roller coasters. The only other one that I thought is Joker's Jinx is also kind of a sort of compact layout, and like a layout that's used in other places, made by a company that's still in business. I don't know if they make any of these models anymore, but that's the one that's like, well, okay, a park could probably find a spot to stick that, and going to one of the other forgotten Six Flags or Cedar Fair parks. Like, at least when I wrote it 6 years ago, it still ran well. So that was the first one on my head that like that might be worth saving and moving to another park.
Yeah, Evan, what about you? I mean, I wrote down like opening years of my notes and things like that. Like the SLC, whatever, Professor Screammore's, it's Mind Eraser. We're going to call it Mind Eraser. That's what it was. That's what it is. It's an SLC. They got new trains like as recently as 2024. So the rolling stock on this is pretty good. It could go somewhere. Superman, we touched on the new train they just got. And they've put in some new attractions. They in 2024 as part of this Scream Punk area, they've got a Zamperla Nebulas that could do to go somewhere. They've got the Zamperla Giant Discovery that opened in 21. They've got a Starflyer that opened in 2017. Evan, like anything that you're going to cherry pick for another Six Flags park or otherwise?
That's what I'm struggling with is with the coaster lineup that they had. I feel like most, if not all of them, were to be relocated to a Six Flags park, it would feel like an empty gesture or a downgrade. I think the only ride that I could see being even sort of considered as a new key moment in a park somewhere else would be Superman, just given the history that ride has and its general favorability. But I think if you basically pick up these rides and plop them down in, let's say, like a Great Adventure, none of them is going to hold up with the legs that it does. I mean, sure, you can move Raging Cajun and put it in a revamped kids area. I think that would work. But if you're solely taking these rides and advertising them as new rides, it's not going to work.
Yeah. My favorite thing I saw with Raging Cajun was our buddy Andrew over at Park Rovers. He put on Twitter yesterday when this news came out. He goes, "Why don't they take Raging Cajun, which again, Spinning Wild Mouse, made by Rever Chan, however you pronounce that, move it to Disney's Animal Kingdom and call it whatever the name of it. I've already butchered the joke.
Yeah,
Triceratops Spin.
Well delivered, Andrew.
Triceratops Spin was the other one. Whatever it was, whatever their they're spinning.
Interrupting yourself over and over, key way to make your joke land.
Anyway, go follow Park Rovers on Twitter. He made the joke better than I did. So
I was when I was last at the park, Firebird was still Apocalypse and was a stand-up coaster. Evan, you've been out since it got converted to a floorless. How was it as a floorless? Because that's one those P&Ms last forever, and it's also a pretty compact layout.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was a rough ride.
Okay.
And that was on a hot day in July, so I can't even imagine what that's like at a park that might put it in opening weekend in April.
So not an idea, because that was
Yeah.
one that I was like, surely there's some now combined chain that doesn't have a floorless coaster somewhere that like, oh well, this would be exciting, but if it doesn't run well, then maybe not worth it to move.
I think the move to floorless was the saving grace on it, and I don't know if it has the ability to hold up after being relocated.
Yeah, and it's like it's the OG B&M. I mean, it was Iron Wolf at Six Flags Great America / Richie Rich's house, and like it would only be like one of a handful of B&M coasters to ever close. You're talking Hulk, Dueling Dragons, Dragon Challenge. I'm sure there's been one other one at this point. I don't know, but B&Ms, they rarely close. So, like, they're known for their reliability, their longevity. But I mean, this is a coaster that opened 35 years ago. And as we've seen, especially with a lot of these arrows recently, they're coasters that come to the end of their service life. So, if Firebird was to go somewhere, I mean, maybe they take the trains, the floorless trains, whatever stand ups are left. I mean, the stand ups that are left, there's Vortex, Green Lantern's gone, so that's no worries. They're not gonna turn Georgia Scorcher into a floorless because that's one of the good stand-ups. So, but maybe you move those to another stand-up and convert it to floorless. I don't know if the track moves. Maybe not. A lot of these things, I feel like Firebird / Apocalypse / Iron Wolf it was a custom layout. So you've got to have the right footprint in a park to find this. And the internet was ablaze yesterday. They're like, you could put Superman at Knott's, you could put Superman at Dorney Park, you could put Superman here, and it's like, cool, great.
But yes, Superman is one that I'm like, you can't move that. Like, it takes up too much space.
It's such a large footprint too. Like, that's a huge chunk of real estate if you were to put it in another park.
I feel like that's one where it's probably cheaper to build a new one, just because I imagine the construction cost of laying that out is more expensive than the steel pipes that make it.
Yeah, it's like the people on the internet who are like, yeah, Hollywood Rip Ride and Rocket, when it closes, it's going to Carowinds. The highly custom, very linear coaster is going to go to Carowinds, where there's no linear space. But go off, internet, do what you got to do. I think that the Nebulas, which again has some, it's got some scream punkish name that I don't know what it is. Those are always fun. I know they're popping up everywhere, but there are plenty of parks in the chain. You could take it down 95 to King's Dominion, and I'm sure they've got they replaced the Shockwave stand-up coaster with the giant frisbee. Delirium, I think, is what it's called. So there's space there. Maybe there's got to be other expansion plots within King's Dominion where you could plop a flat ride like a Nebula's. They've got some others. They've got a scrambler. They've got antique cars, which I'm sure could be used for parts, places like that. But one thing I do want to talk about is the water slides. Like, they just installed like a brand new water coaster, which to me would be a home run attraction at pretty much any water park in the chain that doesn't have a water coaster. Like, I feel like that's one thing we're not considering with the closure is like everyone's like, oh, coasters, flat rides, antique cars, teacups, flying carousel, Spin Sanity, or even like the Starflyer. It's like, where could you put this? But I feel like water slides, the structural build is probably easier than a coaster. They're arguably easier to maintain, but they also have a shorter shelf life. So I'd be curious to see like if something like a Carolina Harbor which doesn't currently have a water coaster. I don't know. I don't think King's Dominion's Waterworks, I think that's what their park is called. They don't have a water coaster. Um, so I'm wondering who is going to be the beneficiary here other than Six Flags selling the land. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know Great Adventures Hurricane Harbor does not have a water coaster either, so that is another easy-ish move just down 95. But yeah, I mean, I think when you have a ride of that caliber, that could hold up another park. I think that's a worthy investment for another water park in the chain.
For sure.
And I think that's also, even with some of their older slides, I think it's probably easier to get away with bringing an old slide to a water park and calling it new, because it's like water slides all kind of look the same. It's easy to add a fresh coat of paint to a water slide, and that is, I think, like you said, Andrew, that seems a much easier job to do, and so I think there's more chance that those, whenever the next water park expansion gets announced, there's a good chance some of those are going to it.
Yeah, and like, and even outside of the Six Flags chain, I mean, Lost Island theme park is they're proof you can just, and Indiana Beach also, they're proof that like amusement park attractions, even if they're a little older, they could have another life somewhere. So we'll I guess we'll see what happens. But what I want to know from you guys and kind of get your thoughts, and Evan, you touched on it a little bit earlier. There were 40 plus parks in the chain. No, 20, so 26 dry parks. And now kind of the first domino has fallen. And so Six Flags America, it's gone. Do we think this is the first domino? Do we think there do we think there are other parks in the chain that we should be worried about? I mean, I don't think they would announce all these at one time. They're kind of going to draw it out. But is there any other parks you guys personally are worried about, either Legacy Six Flags or Legacy Cedar Fair, that could meet this same fate? Obviously, excluding California's Great America, because
I
we
was
know.
going to say, this actually sort of had the opposite effect on me. We know California's Great America has a limited shelf life, but they've never announced the actual closing date. When it was all done, they were like, option went out all the way to 2030 or something. But like, okay, they've given a year's notice for Six Flags America. Presumably that means California's Great America is still, it's not closing this year. It's not closing next year. I've got at least 2 more years in it. I don't know, like, so look, they've given a 1-year park announcement. That's better than we got for some roller coasters that made people very mad, regardless of how you feel about that. And so I think, at least to that point, Andrew, like, yeah, I don't think nothing else is closing after this year, I would think, which is a good sign, at least.
Yeah, we need to soundbite that so I can just dunk on you when it inevitably happens. That's I wonder about a park like Michigan's Adventure, another one of these kind of long forgotten parks. And I know Michigan's Adventure was like what, the third Cedar Fair park ever after Cedar Point and Valley Fair. So like, it's a small one. They've got a little bit of infrastructure here and there. I haven't heard anything. I'm not making things up, but I'm like just using that as an example. And Evan, you mentioned Great Escape. You mentioned Darien Lake. There are parks like Valley Fair, for example, another small park, not a ton of major capital invested over the last couple years. Your parks like your Cedar Points, Kings Island, Carowinds, Great Adventure, over Texas, Fiesta Texas, over Georgia, they're all safe. They, presumably are all safe. But I feel like those mid to smaller tier parks, um, anything can happen. I mean, there is, when we woke up yesterday, we didn't think Six Flags Six Flags America was going to be sold, but real estate in DC is highly expensive, and once the Commanders move back to town, which I believe is happening by 2030, I think it's going to just continue to boom. Maybe that's where they're going to build the stadium.
It's a big plot of land.
It's 500 acres, but that's parking.
They might need to add some public transit to it if they do that.
Yes, America famously known for its public transit. But we're
Uh,
not bitter. It's fine.
I think Evan. I don't know if you want. I think
Yeah.
go ahead.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things that I look at when these inevitable closures happen. I think I look at what other attractions are in the area, whether that be from Six Flags or somewhere else. So that's why I believe Great Escape is on the chopping block. I think that they're willing to put all their eggs in the basket in the stretch between Great Adventure, New England, and Canada's Wonderland. I think that Great Escape is kind of the odd child out. And if you're going that distance, you might as well drive another 2 hours to Canada's Wonderland. So I and the only red herring here is the Wildcat edition. So it's like what's the point of that if they're gonna close it? But that was pre-merger, so you never know, and that's gonna be 100% a ride that gets relocated if the closure does happen. But I think for those parks, I don't know if it's going to be within the year, but I think it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, which is sad. Also, what about La Ronde? Kind of the same thing. It's like it's up there. They speak a lot of French, and but there's another one. Like, did the Zaxby's, the Green Lantern coaster, did that ever open up there, or is it still in pieces in their parking lot?
I don't know,
I
but
forgot
I
about
don't think
that.
All
that would
right,
make anyone
this shows
feel
this
one way or
shows
another.
the level of coaster enthusiasm for La Ronde. It's like,
Uh,
yeah, they were going to open a new coaster like after COVID, and I don't know if it ever happened.
I think the biggest difference with Six Flags America is that, I mean, you sort of mentioned, right, what other attractions are around. Obviously, there's a million things to do in Washington D.C., but also, all right, 2 hours south, you've got King's Dominion. Go 2 hours north, you can be at Dorney. Maybe it's a little more than 2 hours, but it's got to be pretty close. Or Hershey, if you go slightly the other way,
Or Great Adventure
a little
right
bit
there
farther.
too.
Great Adventure.
Mhm.
Like, this is a lot of parks within basically. You could argue it's two metropolitan areas if you've got DC and then like the Philly area slightly above it. And there's a lot of people there. Maybe it could support, but I don't think Six Flags America isn't drawing any tourists to it, right? If you're in Washington D.C. and your kid insists he wants to go ride roller coasters, you're gonna go down to King's Dominion. Uh, and I
It's
don't
probably
think
true.
like Valley Fair doesn't have that problem, right? There isn't a Cedar Fair or a Six Flags park next to Minneapolis on the other side of the city. Even if you're looking at like La Ronde and Canada's Wonderland, like okay, those are two giant cities. I don't think La Ronde is there to attract tourists, probably, but
No, I didn't realize like La
it can
Ronde is like on
probably
the
be
middle of an
supported.
island in the like the
Mhm.
water there. That
Yeah.
was pretty cool.
And so I think that's like sort of a unique situation for that made Six Flags America like an easy one to cut because it's like it's not affecting anyone. Like nobody in that area now can't go to an amusement park owned by the Six Flags Cedar Fair chain. They just have
It's
to
true.
go in
A
one of
little.
the other two directions.
It's a good point. And so before we wrap this up, I got one last question for you guys, and we're going to be in Virginia in a couple of weeks. Eric, obviously, you're flying across the country to do it. Evan, you're driving down. We're going to be at King's Dominion, about a 2 hour drive, as Eric mentioned. Is the news of this closure going to change your plans at all to make you want to go to Six Flags America, tack it in on either end of this trip?
No.
No. I mean I was there 2 years ago and that was it took me 26 years to get there and I think I'm good. I mean I missed the only credit I missed when I was there was um Raging Cajun just because they had some technical closure and wasn't willing to hang around to see if it reopened. But I did my time there. I'm all good.
Okay, good, because I definitely feel the same way. I mean, we're going to be at King's Dominion, which, if we're looking for a park in the Six Flags chain that has a very good coaster lineup, it's that one. And I mean, we're going to be at King's Dominion, and Pantherian isn't even going to be open, and I would rather spend all of my time there. So it's it's sad. Obviously, you hate to see it as enthusiasts park close of any kind, but I also think in a new world where you've got one combined balance sheet, you're going to find ways to cut, you know, loss leaders. And if that happens to be a loss leader and you can make money on the real estate, you got to do what you got to do. Okay. Well, as we play Boys to Men, it's so hard to say goodbye to yesterday. We're going to wrap up this episode of the Coaster 101 podcast. As we mentioned earlier, we've got a website, coaster101.com. Our co-writer Larry has written an article about where he thinks the attractions will go, and based on our conversation, none of us actually had a thought as to where these attractions could go. So go read Larry's article. He's got a lot of thoughts on that.
I think most of his thoughts is they'll probably be worst case sold for scrap. Best case, the trains will go be used for parts somewhere.
Well, that's the way it goes, unfortunately. Also, follow us on all forms of social media. We're at Coaster101, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, YouTube, Pinterest, TikTok, wherever. If there's social media, we're probably okay on it, on that platform. So go follow us at Coaster101. And if you're listening, make sure you're liking, rating, subscribing, leaving reviews, telling your friends, because that's what keeps us going. These we love the views. And if we come up with a catchy episode title like a celebration of all Six Flags parks, but mostly Six Flags America, that's going to get people to listen. And we do that for the audience. What a great episode title. I'm going to run with that. That's going to be fun.
Say, that's a good joke, Andrew. You got to cut this out.
Nah, I'm okay. I don't have to cut out the jokes. Coaster101.com/merch for our latest and greatest Coaster 101 inspired merch, theme park inspired merch. And as always, thanks to JM Entertainment for our theme music. Evan, Eric, I'll see you guys in a couple weeks, but I'm sure we'll talk before then.
See you soon.
Appreciate you guys hopping on. See ya.